the days of the Brothers Grimm, princesses and queens have featured prominently in children's stories. Just look at Disney, which has built an entire empire on the back of often problematic, traditionally gendered femininity. So it was with some confusion that we saw that our neighbors in Gerritsen Beach were protesting a children's story hour at the local branch of the Brooklyn Public Library, where volunteers in costume as queens read books to young children. And honestly, you guys, I'm not really sure why we're doing this segment. This seems... Oh, it's drag queens. Oh, okay, now I'm pissed. Everyone can go suck an egg. Here to talk me off a ledge is the co-founder of Drag Queen Story Hour, Jonathan Hamilt. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
So your critics say that you're indoctrinating children. Tell me, which one of the many drag queens who were visible and well represented in the 90s kidnapped you and indoctrinated you into the world of drag?
I only wish that RuPaul would sweep me away to Hollywood. I mean, whenever there is a radical shift in society where femininity is challenged or met up with masculinity, you're going to have pushback from a conservative people. So they're really mad. And unfortunately, that fear comes out in anger. So that's what we see every day. But we're fighting the good fight by reading books to kids every day.
Yeah, let's back up a little bit. So tell me, what is Drag Queen Story Hour? The name is pretty self-explanatory. Yeah. But how did it come to be?
Yeah, so Drag Queen Story Hour is exactly like it sounds. It's drag queens that read to kids in public schools and libraries, parks, community centers, basically anywhere where you can get kids and drag queens together, we read. It started in 2015 by writer Michelle T. She organized it at the Castro Library, and I saw one of the first readings, and I was like, this is amazing. I just started drag at the time, and I was like, we need to bring this to New York City. I met up with my co-founder now, Rachel Amy, who was working at Feminist Press with NYU, and we teamed together, and we were reading feminist fairy tales in Brooklyn, and that's how it started in New York City.
So you yourself are a drag queen?
Yes, I am.
What is your performer name?
So my name is Onna Louise, which is also my mom's name. So
what does your mom think?
Does
your mom know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And my drag is modeled after her to an extent. So I guess she's one of my style icons. So yeah, we have the same hair color and drag
And for our podcast listeners who can't see you, you are not in drag currently, but could you describe your look as Onna Louise?
I would say slim errands, 1960s, Bewitched, kind of that look. So.
Well, that sounds very fabulous and aspirational.
Yes.
What type of stories do you read when you, as Onna Louise, and your other queens go into libraries?
Yeah, I mean, we read all kinds of books. So we go from the classics like Hungry Hungry Caterpillar or Brown Bear, or we read books about, feeling different or how to be inclusive and celebrate diversity. So we read Neither by Airlie Anderson, or one of our favorite books, Julian is a Mermaid by Jessica Love. So, yeah, we read all different kinds of stories.
And so some of these stories might celebrate gender diversity or put forward the idea that gender is not a binary. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we want kids to, imagine a world where they can represent as they wish. So we want to make sure that the costume closet is open with all options for kids. And, it's play and dress up and freedom to express and be who you are.
And sometimes people get upset about this. For example, Gerritsen Beach, as we mentioned, there were pretty hate-filled flyers going up. And even people who are more temperate in their criticism were saying that they didn't want young children exposed to the idea of gender fluidity or gender as not a binary. What do you say to people like that?
I mean, kids are exposed to gender every day, either by watching TV or on their iPads or walking down the streets. You see reinforced gender roles happen in front of you at school, on the subway, wherever you go. I think people are really scared and confused with the freedom of gender expression. And we're so ingrained with, gender roles that it's hard to get outside of the box of that. And people really confuse gender and sexuality, which are two very separate things that people like to cross over or mix up terminology. And that scares people when they, don't do the research or know what's going on.
Right. I mean, to me, so many of the arguments for people who were like, whoa, 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 I'm not transphobic. I just don't think that my 4-year-old should be exposed to a man in drag is like, well, that is inherently transphobic because why not? What is threatening to you about gender diversity, about men choosing to wear women's clothing or about a trans woman? And another question I have is if instead of a drag queen, it were a trans woman reading a book to kids, I wonder if some of that language would have been more obviously transphobic. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that, like, because many drag queens are cis men wearing makeup and women's clothing, that people can get away with, like, tiptoeing this line of, like, oh, I'm not transphobic, though?
Well, I guess traditionally a definition of drag would be a cis man dressing up as a woman. But for our story hour, we have lots of different drag queens that range from trans men or trans women or non-binary people. We have like a genderqueer trans woman who does drag as one of our readers. So there's a lot of crossover. And we explain drag to kids as a character you make up that is fabulous. And a drag queen is a character you create up to embody a feminine side of you. So drag can be on top of anyone who's trans or not. So all the lines are kind of blurred, but the kids are all down for it. They kind of get it. It's more of the adults that can't understand it or don't want to be open to it.
Yeah, what is the response of kids who participate?
I mean, they love it. I mean, they love the bright colors, the big wigs, the sequins, the drama, the flair, the theatrics of all the drag queens. They ask really funny questions like, is that your real hair? Is that your real name? Are those your real nails? Did your parents name you that? So they're down for it, and they know it's fun and it's dress up. So, I think having a positive queer role model like a drag queen, spreading literacy is way more amazing than some really misogynist, say, fairy tale Disney character.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the role of misogyny, because I think that the idea that dress up is okay, except if my son wants to dress up as a girl, is part of this larger discussion, right? Like, it also seems to me that if you had a masculine of center woman going in with like a butch haircut and no makeup reading to kids, you wouldn't have this type of backlash.
Yeah, I mean, the hatred for women runs really deep, to be quite honest, and that can trickle down to even boys showing an effeminate side. So it's really sad to see that. And with Story Hour, we like to have, a level playing field where anybody can express who they want in a very safe space.
I see from your shirt that you are celebrating 50 years since Stonewall.
Yes.
What do you think Marsha P Johnson, for example, would think about the Drag Queen Story Hour?
Oh my God, I feel like she would love it, and we would be having her read at DragCon this year. I think she'd be obsessed and really excited, and, for the rights and things she was fighting for, I wonder if anyone could see how far we've come in society, because things have changed so much, and the struggle is still there, but now it's moved on past these generations, and the community has grown, and now drag queens are, leaving the nightlife and coming into the light in the communities and giving back in this way. So, yeah, I wonder if it was even conceivable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the other flip side, right? On the one hand, you have kids who are getting to be exposed to gender diversity and, being as fabulous as you want to be. And you also have drag queens who are normalized and get to come into family spaces, into public institutions like the library, and give back to the community. That, too, seems pretty radical.
Yeah, and we have a lot of repeats participants and kids who come to Story Hour, and we always ask the question, like, does anyone know what a drag queen is? And a lot of the kids now are like, yeah, drag queens are people that dress up and read to kids. That's their definition. And even my co-founders' kids are like, drag queens are for babies. They're for little kids. They're not for me. I'm 9 now. So I just love that reframework of that's what a drag queen is to kids.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
There was one piece of conservative criticism that I read by a self-identified cis gay man who said that drag queens are inherently sexual and that therefore it was inappropriate to bring them into this library space. What would you say to that?
I mean, drag plays itself in very different ways, and it can be sexual like anything else can. And, all adults have their own adult lives and are allowed to lead those lives. But when we go into a space and do a children's program, we follow all the rules and guidelines that you would for any story hour. You and I are dressed appropriately for this interview.
Why, thank you.
Catch us on a Friday night, for Pride, we might look a little different. So when we read, all of our drag queens come prepared, and we're kid-friendly, and we cover kid topics. We read children's books, we sing children's songs, we do children's crafts, and yeah, it's much different than being in a nightclub, for sure.
So any other closing thoughts for Pride? Are there specific children's books that you might recommend to people as they're looking for Pride-associated content?
Yeah, we read this great book called This Day in June, which is just about the Pride Parade. It rhymes. It's really cute. So we've been trying to read that book every day this month. And yeah, basically any Todd Parr book is amazing for Pride.
And if people want to participate, either by bringing their kid to a drag queen story hour, or if they're a queen and they want to get involved, how should they do that? Do you guys have your own like RuPaul's Drag Race, but like for queens who want to be a storyteller?
Sort of. We hope for more inclusive than RuPaul, but yeah, check out our website. Our Facebook page has all of our events nationally, so you can find your area where you're at, where your next reading will be, and you can email the correct contact on our website to get involved, either storytelling, organizing, donating your time, money, or space.
And actually, just a personal question maybe to close out. So you are the co-founder of the New York chapter. Mm-hmm. What drew you to this? Do you work with kids outside of this? Why did you think it was important to do this work with the younger set?
I mean, if I grew up in the South, and I feel like if I had some positive role model that was queer, like a drag queen reading to me during story hour, it would have changed my life completely. Like, I grew up in a very conservative Southern town, told my whole life that, I couldn't be feminine or show my feminine side. And then imagine if I had that encouragement and that person to be like, hey, it's okay to express yourself and be who you are. Where would I be now if I'm doing story hour? Now I don't know who I would be if I had that encouragement as a kid.
And I saw on your website or in an interview that you did that actually some of the best attended drag queen story hours are in rural communities or small towns where you aren't able to see gender diversity as easily as you might be in New York City.
Right, yeah. I mean, I feel like in New York we live in such a bubble. We're kind of like in the capital of the Hunger Games or something. It's just very different than the rest of the world or the country. So in these rural areas, people come miles and miles, like 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 miles away to come to these one readings and support for either a counter protest or to bring their kids a story hour. So it's a really loving, community that draws in a lot of people from far away.
And what was the incident at Gerritsen Beach like, by the way? So we saw these hateful flyers up promising a protest. What actually happened on the day of?
Well, there actually was a protest, the megaphones and, the signs and everything. But the counter-protest was a lot bigger than the actual protest. And we had a great reading and a lot of love and support from all of our allies. So
that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. Happy Pride.
Yeah.